Today we're doing something a little different. We're taking 5 AI headlines that sound like they belong in 5 different universes, and we're putting them in one story. Because when you line them up, you start to see the same theme over and over. AI is either doing everything, doing nothing, or doing something weird in the middle.
And somehow there's also a dog in the middle of it. There is absolutely a dog in the middle of it. But let's start with the headline that feels like the opening scene of a workplace thriller.
Dark Matter's CEO, right? The one who basically said AI does almost all of our mortgage work now, and then, casually, mentioned that a chunk of the humans got laid off.
Yeah, the number that jumped out was the brag. AI handles about 94% of the work, which sounds like a victory lap, until you remember that the remaining percentage represents people. And for about 5% of staff, that announcement wasn't a fun statistic, it was a pink slip. It's the kind of corporate flex that makes you ask, are we celebrating efficiency, or are we just getting comfortable saying out loud that entire teams can disappear?
And it also creates this new emotional math in offices. If your company claims AI can handle 94% of what used to be your job, what exactly are you supposed to do with that information on a Tuesday morning?
You update your resume, that's what you do. But here's what's interesting. If AI is already redecorating the office, like that headline basically implied, then why do we keep hearing another story at the same time? This idea that AI isn't actually boosting productivity in the real economy. Perfect transition, because that's our second big tension. There was this report where thousands of CEOs were asked about AI's impact on their businesses, jobs, productivity, the whole promise. And the takeaway was basically, so far, not much. Not a little disappointing, not mixed results. More like, the needle hasn't moved.
Which is wild, because if you only listen to earnings calls and big stage demos, you'd think AI has already rewritten the economy. But a lot of leaders are essentially admitting, we've bought the tools, we've experimented, and the results aren't showing up in the big numbers yet.
Economists love this part, because they've got that old idea, the productivity paradox, where shiny new tech shows up, everyone talks about it, and then the measurable gains don't show up for a while.
Exactly. And listeners might be thinking, wait, how can both be true? How can one CEO say, AI does basically everything, and we laid people off, while thousands of other CEOs shrug and say, productivity? Maybe the answer is that AI's impact is uneven. In some repetitive, document-heavy workflows, like parts of mortgage processing, it can replace a lot quickly. In other places, it's still an experiment that looks great in a slide deck, but doesn't integrate cleanly into day-to-day life. Or, it's creating work while promising to remove it. People spend hours verifying outputs, managing risk, writing prompts, checking compliance. Sometimes the automation comes with a new layer of babysitting.
So that's the first act of our story. AI is the office ghost that can either haunt your job or mostly just haunt your budget.
Now Act 2 shifts from cubicles to geopolitics. Because while businesses are still arguing about whether AI is paying off, there's a separate scoreboard everyone's staring at.
The Stanford report that basically says China is pulling ahead in the AI race.
That's the one. The vibe is China is moving fast. Investment, deployment, momentum, while the US is still debating what the competition even is. Is it a race? Is it collaboration? Is it regulation? Is it all of the above?
It's like showing up to a track meet and holding a committee meeting at the starting line. And to be fair, some debate is healthy, but the headline captures a real anxiety. If one country is better at turning AI into infrastructure, into products, into systems, into scale, then AI hype becomes AI advantage.
Which also reframes the CEO productivity confession. Even if many companies aren't seeing results yet, the competition is still accelerating. It's not like you can opt out and assume you'll be fine. Right. This is where the narrative gets messy. AI might not be transforming every office today, but the global momentum is still real. The scoreboard is still running.
Okay, so we've got layoffs on one side, sluggish productivity on the other, and a geopolitical sprint happening in the background. Now we bring in the dog.
We bring in the dog. This story is almost cinematic. A family loses their dog, and then someone tries to extort them for money. The alleged scammer sends photos as proof, but the images are AI generated, which is such a dark twist on a technology that's often marketed as playful, like, look, it can draw your cat as an astronaut. Meanwhile, in the real world, someone's using it to fabricate evidence in a ransom attempt. And what I find chilling is how low the barrier is. You no longer need a real photo. You don't need to have seen the dog. You just need to generate something that looks believable enough to create panic. But in this case, it didn't work. The family got their dog back and the scam fell apart. Which is a relief, but also a warning. AI doesn't have to be perfect to be dangerous, it just has to be convincing for long enough.
And it shows this strange dual reality again. In boardrooms, some leaders say AI isn't moving productivity, but on the street, AI is already changing the texture of trust. What you believe, what you doubt, what counts as proof.
So AI is simultaneously an overhyped business tool and an underappreciated social weapon.
That's a strong way to put it. But yes, and now Act 3. The machines need somewhere to live.
Data centers, the physical side of all this magic. And apparently the newest idea is, why keep building them on land when the ocean is sitting right there? The pitch is basically power and cooling. Data centers consume a ton of electricity, and they generate a ton of heat. The ocean is this massive natural cooling system, and it opens up new possibilities for locating infrastructure where energy is available.
It sounds futuristic, but it's also kind of logical. If AI is going to keep scaling, more models, more training, more computation, then we're going to chase energy wherever it is. And that's the part people miss when they treat AI like it's only software. AI is racks, wires, chips, land, water, power grids, permits, and now maybe floating or offshore facilities. The hype has weight. Literally.
And this loops back to the China versus US thread too. Because whoever builds the infrastructure fastest, data centers, power access, supply chains, gets to run more of the world's computation. So let's tie the 5 headlines into one picture. We've got a company saying AI can do almost everything, and people lost jobs. We've got CEOs in aggregate saying AI hasn't boosted productivity meaningfully yet. We've got a report suggesting China is outpacing the US in AI progress. We've got an AI-enabled scam using fake dog photos to pressure a family.
And we've got data centers eyeing the ocean because the demand for compute is colliding with the limits of land and power.
When you say it like that, it sounds less like a tech trend and more like a society getting stretched in 5 directions at once.
Yes. And if you're listening and wondering what you're supposed to take away from all this, here's one grounded takeaway. The AI era isn't arriving as one clean story, it's arriving as contradictions. Some people feel it as layoffs, some feel it as why isn't this working yet? Some feel it as international competition. Some feel it as scams and distrust, and some feel it as rising electric bills and giant buildings full of servers. And that's why it's worth zooming out. Not to get swept up in hype and not to dismiss it either, but to notice where AI is actually landing and who's absorbing the costs when it does. Also, maybe a smaller takeaway. If someone messages you with proof and asks for money, especially when emotions are high, slow down. Verify. Because the era of pics or it didn't happen just got complicated.
And maybe the biggest question to leave people with is this. If we can't even agree on whether AI is boosting productivity, how are we going to manage what it's doing to jobs, trust, and infrastructure at the same time?
That's the episode, honestly. AI isn't one thing, it's a bunch of realities colliding. And depending on where you're standing, it looks like a miracle, a disappointment, a threat, or a floating building in the ocean.
We'll be back with more stories where the future shows up, messy, contradictory, and very human. Until then, take care of each other. And if you've got a dog, give them an extra hug.
So I wouldn't come home low, just wait.